Welcome everybody to the 2021 Galway Film Flam. My name is Niall McKay, and today I am talking to Maurice O'Carroll about Mountrath Unlocked, which is a wonderful documentary. Welcome, Maurice. It's great to have you here. Would you like to just tell us a little bit about yourself, where you know your film making past, if you like, and we'll home in on some questions about the documentary after that.
Sure. Thanks a million for having me, Niall. I've been filmmaking since I lived in London. I came back in 2005. And I tell people I've been a student for the last 10 years or so. I, I started off wanting to write, and then I picked up a camera and I just dived into the whole spectrum of filmmaking. And in 2015, I had a feature-length film it premiered at Galway Fla, and that went on
Fucking
to
diesel, was
theatrical.
it? Yeah.
No, Dead Along the Way.
Oh yes, of course. Sorry, I beg your pardon. Yeah, yeah.
So that premiered at the Fla, got theatrical release, and Donald Clark, he favorably compared it with Tarantino. And it's on Amazon Prime today, but that's alongside Sucking Diesel that you spoke about. So normally you go on and you try and make a second feature, but I decided to do a web series with the view of developing it for episodic TV at some stage. And that's Sucking Diesel. And I was supposed to make another feature film in 2020. I thought this 2020 is going to be my year, and then the pandemic hit. Yeah.
And tell us how you came to. Are you from Mountrath? How did you come to the topic of Mountrath?
Well, we moved up here. My wife and I moved up. She works in the Midlands. She works with a big department store, and she kind of gets shifted around and stuff. So we needed somewhere very central, and we ended up here in Mountrath about 5 years ago. And I actually made Dead Along the Way when we got here. So we rent a house, and there was plenty space here. And I asked the guy we were renting off, could I make a film in it? He said, yeah. So, and we're still here today.
And when you started to make the documentary Mountrath Unlocked, what did you start with the same topic as you finished with? Because it was obviously there was a lot of it was about COVID during the lockdown. So how how did it come about?
It's a good question. I didn't end up with the film I thought I'd have when I started off. But I did go out and I just gave myself permission just to listen to what everyone else had to say. I knew how I felt about everything, and I just wanted to hear what the people in this town felt. And I suppose I keep very much to myself, and a lot of people in the town wouldn't have known me. So I just reached out to them and to people I didn't know and that I hadn't spoken to before, and tried to find a cross section of the community and just see how they felt about what was very extraordinary times.
And I mean, they were great. They're great people and great characters. And I mean, I just have a quote marked here. There was no sex in Ireland in those days. That was from the older lady. Just a wonderfully honest and candid, and also very telling. Like, how did you find the people, your characters, or your cast, if you like, for the documentary?
I was walking my dog. The first guy I spoke to was Eddie Phelan, who runs the restaurant. And I found him. I was actually walking my dog, and I met a guy, and I says, who would be the best person to start talking to? And I thought it would just grow from there. And so he's the first person I spoke to. And Esther, the woman you mentioned, I was talking to the guy that owned the secondhand store, and she came in, and I said, would you mind if I spoke to you at some stage? And so it was very organic. Um, and I did want to find a cross section. I always wanted younger people as well. For some reason, they didn't really want to get involved. So I wanted to get like a couple of 16-year-olds or something in. That would just be my one regret about the whole thing, is I didn't get them in. But Yeah, so it was a very organic process, really. And what I loved about them was they were all so sincere. They were
Yeah,
all very honest. They all opened up their doors to me, and they just told me exactly how they felt, and I think that comes across in it.
absolutely, it does. Yeah, 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 yeah. No, and I mean, all your character, like all the contributors, if you like, were wonderful. Um, and did you start off wanting to make a documentary about a pandemic, or did you start off wanting to make a documentary about Mountrath?
I never imagined making a documentary. So I suppose when it all kicked off in March, I was actually up in Dundalk College, and I was trying to get this film together, a feature film that we were going to shoot. And we were looking at the medical ward in the college because we had a scene that needed a hospital. And then they got word that the schools were shutting down the very next day. I think by the time I got home, I was starting to feel sick. And I thought, I possibly have something here. And to cut a long story short, I did get very sick, and the doctor wanted to put me into hospital. And by the time I got it was so hard to get a test back then. So it was weeks later when I got a test, but it came back negative. But as soon as that test came back, I thought, like our whole world had changed. We were like, you literally weren't allowed to have someone into your home anymore. So I had all my equipment, and I just thought I have to go out and make something. I have to document this because like we were locked into a 2 kilometer zone, and I thought like someone has to have a voice in this town. I thought other people would be doing it around Ireland. I just felt it was my duty to go out and talk to them. And again, I was just open to what they had to say, and it ended up being a very cathartic thing for me because I found it very difficult in the beginning, being locked in home and being told you can't go outside the 2 kilometers. But their attitude and that message of hope that comes out through the documentary, it was brilliant for me.
And it definitely kind of represents the spirit of the country, even though I know it's County Laois, and but it definitely represents, because I live in a small town here in Wicklow, and it's very much the same thing. Both a kind of a practical and a heartfelt approach to things in terms of that. People just kind of got on with it, but did what they needed to do. And that came across. I thought that there was great. I loved the girl who was in lockdown herself, or self isolation, I guess, because you could see that it was really affecting her. Maybe even more than affecting other people. How did you run into her? Or how did you get to? How did you find her? I suppose.
I was very conscious of trying to get young people in, and I was literally on people's Facebook and Instagram from this town, and I came across her and I reached out to her, told her what I was doing. She was the last person I spoke to, and it was actually the first time I ever wore a mask when I spoke to her. And it's amazing how awkward I felt that I was putting it on at the car before I was carrying my gear into her house, and I was very conscious that she was ill, and I didn't want to give her anything, but I still felt very self-conscious about wearing a mask. And it's amazing now it's so normalized. But yeah, I was just reaching out to her on Facebook, and it was fantastic to listen to her, and not being able to see her friends at her age, and it's so important, and just the positivity in which she dealt with it all.
And when you said, because it's quite tricky to make a film practically during a pandemic, but also it's it's quite tricky to make a film when there's a lot of news on and a lot of stuff on. Did you feel how did you approach it that way? Did you feel you needed to go a little bit deeper underneath the skin of it, or how did you?
In terms, it go under the skin in terms of what?
Well, in terms of there's a lot. There was probably a lot of news about the pandemic while you're making the documentary, and that's quite tricky in a way because you don't want to you didn't, simply repeat what you hear on the news. You have to sort of, how did you think your way around that? Did you sit down and plan it, or?
No, I didn't plan it. Again, I was just very open to what they were saying. I just wanted to listen. And as I said to everyone, I don't want this to become political in any way, or I just want to hear about the town, about themselves. As I said to them, we'll broach COVID at some stage because I don't necessarily want it to be a COVID documentary either. I want it to be a character portrait of the town.
Yeah, and you definitely manage that. The I noticed that you had a huge crew working for you on the documentary. Can you tell us a little bit about just the practicalities of filming? Uh, you know,
Yeah, so there was just myself.
I said it was
And
huge. It is.
yeah, yeah. So I literally had to do everything. So, you know, come up with the concept for the documentary, set up all the cameras, audio, editing, everything. So it was actually very difficult because we weren't like when I was talking to Eddie and Johnny inside the bar, like, the two of them are barmen, and you're seeing the guards go past, and I'm not supposed to be in there. And I'm like, well, am I allowed in here because I've got a camera and I'm making it? You didn't know. Everything was up in the air. And it was the same when I was talking to Eddie, all of them. So there was that difficulty. And when I was out shooting the streets, like I would duck into alleyways if I heard a car coming, and like I ducked the guards because I was like, they could actually put a stop to the whole documentary. They could tell me you're actually not allowed out of your home, and which I did. I did get stopped at one stage and they said, "What are you doing out of your home?" So I felt like I was a bit of a criminal, like I was underground making it. So that was actually very challenging. I forgot that until you mentioned it.
Yeah, but I found the guards here in my part of the world. They had a very practical approach to stuff. As long as you weren't sort of really taking the mick, they were happy to work with you on stuff. Uh,
Yeah.
and you also had drone shots, and the film is beautifully crafted. I might say, like, all the interviews are lovely, really nicely shot, and there's no, it definitely doesn't look like a one man documentary. It looks like you had a crew. But did you do the drone stuff yourself as well?
I did the drone stuff. Now I got the drone stuff early morning. I was like, I'll never get away with this during the day. So I took the drone out early morning and got them. Um, but yeah, I love filmmaking, and when I started with getting into cameras and I became a bit of a tech head, and so it stood me well then when I had to go out and actually have to shoot all the stuff myself. So I suppose I just got a little bit lucky that it looks okay.
And did the experience teach you anything about filmmaking that you didn't know before, or what did you learn while you were doing it?
I think I didn't learn anything about filmmaking as such, but it taught me a lot about myself. And again, the fact that I didn't include myself in the community here a lot while I was here 5 years and I didn't know anyone down there. And now I go down and like my wife could send me for something and I get out at the roundabout and it could be like an hour later when I get home because I'm talking to the community here. And I've done that, and like I'm a tree man and I'm very much into community. It was just when I came here, I felt like a bit of a blow in, and but they accept you with open arms here. Like I get, like you said, every small town in Ireland does really. So it taught me a bit about myself that, do you know what, don't get too wrapped up in work stuff, which is what I've been doing. And that was a big lesson that I learned from all of them.
And so when did you film it exactly? Because it was during the first lockdown, right? It was the.
Yeah, I started in April, and I I remember when I put up a shot on my screen May the 8th, or sorry, May the 5th in huge bold writing, because supposedly that's when we were going to come out of lockdown. I was like, oh my God, how are we going to get to May the 5th? And then I could be wrong, but I think it was May the 18th, they said after that. And I was like, oh, and like here we still are today. So I started in April, and then we would have came out of lockdown, and I would have got some more shots around the town. Like when you see the town a bit populated, that wasn't pre-COVID. That was after we were like our 2 kilometers. And a lot of people would forget that Laois went into a lockdown when all the rest of the country was still open. And I took my camera out one day, but I felt like I had told the story I wanted to tell already. So I left it at that.
And when you said that it wasn't the film you set out to make, how do you mean? What was the film you set out to make?
I suppose I wanted to discover more about COVID. Um, I was I was doing research myself on what it was about and where it could have possibly come from. How is it going to affect us? And I just wanted to see how other people were they feeling as angry as I was about being locked down. Because like personally, I've never agreed with lockdowns, and that won't come across in the documentary because it wasn't about me. But that's how I felt. I was like, I don't believe that this is the right path to take. So then I went out and I listened to the community here and what they felt about it.
And when you got, I'll kind of wrap up on this, but when you got back, say, with that first a lot of filming and you're kind of faced with the edit, uh, how did that make you feel? Did you already have the story kind of crafted in your head, or did you have to dig through a lot and find exactly what you wanted?
Um, I actually enjoy the editing process. So I, it did start revealing itself to me as the people were talking. I knew the direction it was going, so it wasn't too hard to dig through all the material. I mean, like every interview was possibly an hour long because we spoke about everything and anything, just so we got relaxed but again, I don't mind the mining through all of that to get the story. So I know I enjoy the editing process.
Yeah, and it's sort of what you have to do really to relax people, isn't it? You get them talking. Everybody feels a bit nervous when they go on camera at first, so it takes a while for people to
Yeah.
just chat about, whatever. Um, finally, is there what would you do? Would you do anything differently now? Or are you very pleased with the outcome?
I was pleased to get to the end of it. I was. Because I suppose once I got to like when I was making it, I thought, do you know what? I'll just put this onto RT or onto Virgin and then it started changing, and you get to that point where you're like, all right, I have the story told and I want to move on. So I would have liked to have got to spoken to like schoolgoers, like leaving cert year or something. I think that's the one thing that I would have loved to have had in. But it's like that with every film you make. There's always some regret in it. Yeah,
There's always oh yeah, there's always the scene that you
yeah,
didn't
yeah,
do.
yeah. I
But
could
it's
have
a
done this.
wonderful
I could.
film, and it's a lovely slice of life, and almost almost like slow filmmaking. It's where it's concentrated just on characterizations as opposed to huge big setups. Which I really appreciated. So. Well, thank you very much, Morris. I hope that the viewers will enjoy the documentary as much as I did.
Thanks very much, Niall. I appreciate it.